780 minus 520. And our time was from 3 minutes to 1 minute. And that will also give us 260 over, 3 minutes to 2 minutes, sorry. And that'll give us 260 over 1. And if we were to try this again from 4 minutes to 3 minutes, we would see that we get 260 over 1 again. So our rate of change with respect to the time constant is going to be 260 over 1. And then that means that we have to next determine what does the rate of change represent. In this instance, the rate of change is a constant that would equal 260 feet, because that's how far we traveled in every 1 minute. So this represents the distance that the band marches per minute. So we see that they march 260 feet per minute. Now let's go ahead and talk about the slope. This is a lot of what you'll be utilizing in your classic assignment. To find the slope, when we have a graph, we can just count. Our slope is always given to us as rise over run. Or we can also call it the change in y over the change in x, as you see written here. So we first need to figure out what is our change in y. Remember that y is always how many times you go either up or down. And your run is how many times you go left or right. So we need to figure out to get from one point to the other point, how many times did we go up or down, and then how many times did we go left or right. If we were to start at this point here, we need to figure out if we need to go up or down to get to the other point. If you notice, we have to go down to get to the other dot. So we're going to go down, and we notice that that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times that we went down. So we went down 6 times. And now, if you think about it, when you go down, do your numbers get bigger or smaller? We know that as you go downwards, your number gets smaller, so that means it will be a -6 because we're going in the negative direction. And when you go, now we have to go to the left to get to the other point. And so we would go over to get to that point, and we would see that it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So that would be over 5. And when we go to the left, we also notice that our numbers get smaller. So we will say that would be a -5. And a -6 divided by a -5 is the same thing as 6/5. Now, I chose to start at that green dot, but you could have also started at the bottom dot. So if we were to start at the bottom dot, we would end up with the same answer, and we can prove this. We see to get to the next dot, we would have to go up, so we have to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. And since we're going upward, that is going to be a positive number that will be on top. And then we would have to go to the right, and that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So that would also give us 6 over 5. And if you notice, both of these have the same answer, 6/5. So it never matters which dot you start at. I want you to pause the video here and try this example on your own. And then you can go ahead and press play when you have completed it and check and see if your answer is correct. All right, let's go ahead and do this example together. So if I want to start at this top dot here, I would have to first go either up or down. Up and down is always first. And I notice that I'm going to have to go down in this instance to get to the other dot. So I would go down 1, 2, 3 times. So my top number is going to be 3. Now, since I went down, remember that it's going to be a negative number that is on top. And then I would have to go either left or right. I see that to get to the other dot, I'm going to have to go to the right. So I would count over to the right 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So that bottom number is going to be 4. And when you go to the right, we see that will give us a positive number. Now remember, your up and down number always goes on top, so that gives us a negative 3/4. So the major points to remember here is that your step 1 is you always have to go up or down first. Now, if you go up, your answer is going to be a positive, and if you go down, it's going to be a negative. Then after you go up and down, you have to then do your step 2, which is to go either left or right. And when you go to the left, your answer is negative. And when you go to the right, your answer is positive. Now remember that up and down is always going to be on top. And then on the bottom is always going to be your left and right number. Let's go ahead and find the slope of these straight lines. We see here, to get from one dot to the other, I'm going to start at my top dot. I would have to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. So my top number is going to be 8. And since I went downwards, that will give me a negative number. And I notice that I have already made it to this next dot, so I don't have to go anywhere else. So the bottom number is going to be 0. If we were to put that in our calculator to simplify it, negative 8 divided by 0, we would see that we would just get the number 0 out. We would get undefined. There would be an error in our calculator. So when we see that word error, we know that our answer is going to be undefined. So whenever you have a straight line going up and down, you know that your answer is always going to be undefined. But when you have a line that's going left and right, we see that our answer is always going to be 0. And we can prove that by seeing that since we do not go up and down at all to get to the other dot, our top number is going to be 0. And then our bottom number, we count how many times we go to left or right. And I notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it will be a 0 over 6. And if we put that in our calculator, we did 0 divided by 6, we would get 0 as an answer. So any line that goes left and right is always going to have the answer of 0. All right, we're going to find the slope of a line. Now that we do not have our graph, we can just simply figure out what is the change in y over the change in x. Now remember, your y values are always going to be the second number. And the change, just like on our rate problem, is always going to be the y's subtracted from each other. So your change is when you subtract. So change means that you subtract. So we're going to take our two y values. I'm going to go ahead and start with my 6, and I'm going to subtract that from 8. And that's going to be divided by our change in our x's. And since I started with the 6, that means I also have to start with the 15. So that will give me 15 minus 10. And 6 minus 8 is going to give me a negative 2. And 15 minus 10 is going to give me 5. So my answer would be negative 2/5. We're going to do the same thing for the next one. We're going to find our change in y. So we're going to subtract our two y values from each other. So I'll start with my second y value, which is 12. And I'll take that minus 5. And that's going to be divided by our change in x. So that's going to be our two x values subtracted from each other. So that will be 10 minus 8. And remember, since I started with the 12, I have to start with the 10. So I have 12 minus 5, which gives me 7, and 10 minus 8, which gives me 2. So then my final answer is 7/2. Now I want you to pause this video here and try these examples on your own. Once you've finished, you can press start, and we will go through the problems together. Alright, if we look at this here, remember we're always going to do the change in y over the change in x. So the change in y is going to be our two y values subtracted from each other. So I'm going to start with my second number of a 5, and I'm going to subtract 13 from that. Remember, your y values are always the second number in the parentheses. And then I'm going to divide by our change in x, which is going to be 6 and 10. And since I started with 5, that means I have to start with 10. So I will do 10 minus 6. And that will give me a negative 8 over 4. Now, 8 divided by 4 is the same thing as 2, so I can say that this answer is the same thing as negative 2. Let's try the blue problem together. So we're going to start with our change in y, which we know is the second numbers. So we're going to have 8 minus 6, and that's going to be over our change in x, which is 12 minus 4. 8 minus 6 gives us 2, and 12 minus 4 gives us 8. So we have 2 8s, which can be simplified to 1/4. And that'll be your final answer. Go ahead and start on your Class Geek assignment and raise your hand if you need any assistance.